Good day, dear students. You are welcome to our today's lecture on the course Translation Problems. The theme of the lecture is Pragmatics of Translation, Transmission of a Communicative Effect of the Original in Translation. Please write down the plan of our lecture. Today we are going to study 3 points. The first, transmission of a communicative effect of the original in translation. The second, the pragmatic adaptation of the text in translation. The third, categories of translation according to a pragmatic task of a translator. In a number of cases, the pragmatic purpose of translation is in the achievement of the desirable influence, that is, communicative effect, on the receptor of translation. The communicative effect, which must be reproduced in translation, may be determined by the dominant function of the original. Having read the works of Shakespeare or Dickens in Russian, the reader must feel all the talent of the author of the original, understand why he is considered to be a great writer. If a translator manages to achieve it, we can speak about an adequate reproduction of the communicative effect of the original. The dominant function of scientific and technical texts is the description and explanation of instructions on the use of objects of reality. If the receptor of these texts can carry out the described experiment or fulfill the given operations on certain equipment, then the communicative effect is considered to be achieved. Sometimes the scientific information given in the translation is more comprehensible than in the original, and in this case we say that the translation carries out its basic pragmatic task even better than the original. Transmission of a communicative effect of the original in translation. The pragmatic purpose of translation is the achievement of desirable influence. Transmission of the communicative effect of the original in translation is also connected with scientific and technical materials. Here we may speak about description and explanation of instructions, then translation process, then communicative effect which is achieved, and experiments are carried out and operations are fulfilled. The most difficult task for a translator to provide the necessary response from the receptor. Here, the translator should know individual peculiarities of the receptor. Only knowing his character and psychological state, it is possible to say what his emotional or behavioral response will be on a given statement. As a rule, the translator does not put the task of achieving the given communicative effect of the original. But if it is put, its execution requires pragmatic adaptation of the text. Such adaptation, for example, of the text of advertisement must provide the sales of the goods being advertised, so it leads to making a new parallel translation text which takes into account specific tastes of future customers. A great role is played by differences in historic and cultural background of different language communities and customers and conditions. It stands to reason that the natives of the tropical islands can hardly be impressed by the statement that something is as white as snow. It seems imperative that translation should involve a kind of pragmatic adaptation to provide the presentation of the new communicative effect of the original, and this adaptation must ensure that the text conveys the same attitude to the reported facts as the original text does. It goes without saying that in an adequate translation, the comical should not be replaced by tragical. A praise should not turn into a censure. In this scheme, we can see the transmission of communicative effect of the original in translation. Original text has communicative effect, and as a result, you can see source language receptor more. And in translation text, it has also communicative effect, and as a result, we can see target language receptor. It is less. And we can say that source language receptor and target language receptor are not equal. The pragmatic adaptation of the text in translation. The execution of achieving communicative effect of the original on the receptor requires pragmatic adaptation of the text. Here we can see, for example, advertisement translation, then new parallel translation text, for example, future customer specific tastes, historic and cultural background, then customs, living traditions, and also sales of goods being advertised is also here. Then differences in historical and cultural backgrounds, customs and living conditions of different language communities play a great role. The natives of the tropical island can hardly be impressed by the statement that something is as white as snow, or their relations are cooling. For example, he is as cool as cucumber. A miss is as good as a mile. Translation categories. There are draft translation or summarizing, working translation or regular translation, and official translation. It is ready to be published. These categories appear according to a pragmatic task of a translator. In some cases, according to a pragmatic task of concrete translation act, a translator can give a simplified translation of a text. This task appears when the receptor must be acquainted with the main content and the text in a very short period of time. Such simplified translation can be considered as a preliminary stage in the process of the translator's work on preparing the full text of translation. In connection with it, we can speak about translations of 3 different categories, and each of them meet certain types of requirements. As it was mentioned earlier, there are 3 categories: draft translation, working translation, and official translation. Translations of the first category are carried out on the level of indication of a situation. They transmit what the original is about and sometimes have omissions and departures from the target language norm. Translations of the second category transmit the subject logical content of the original on the level of description of the situation, follow the norm of the target language, but may be non-adequate in the reproduction of the connotational aspect of the original and use some explanations because of the loss of information. Translations of the third category give communicatively equal texts in source language and target language, reproducing all functionally relevant elements of the original content, including its pragmatic potential. Now, dear students, you are given control questions. So, first question is: speak on transmission of a communicative effect of the original in translation. Describe it in a detailed way. The second: speak on the pragmatic adaptation of the text in translation. The third: describe categories of translation according to a pragmatic task of a translator. Next, you are given references and supplementary literature which will be necessary for you during your preparation for your seminar lessons. Thank you for your attention.